good? Ladies and gentlemen, hold up. I'm gonna flip this.
I just
Flip a camera on over. What's good, ladies and gentlemen? How y'all doing? Welcome. We are back once again for a second episode of just Rob and Gabe.
Yep.
I guess that's just what it's gonna be called because we are not creative when it comes to fancy names.
I think that works.
Yeah. Eventually, maybe it'll turn into something else. I don't know. But we're back. We got a couple of things to talk about today. I did want to talk about
this on the live stream.
Oh, is it frozen? Oh no!
It's got the audio, so technical difficulties. We will. We're getting there. He knows what it is. It is what it is. I'm not just looking at my phone. And there it is. There it is. All right, good. Good to go.
Yep, my bad. I forgot to reset the camera. But how y'all doing? Again, welcome again to actually see me now here. We got a couple things we want to talk about today, and one of the big ones being, look at his shirt, Dune. We're both fans of Dune, but I'm not as big of a fan as this good sir right here. He knows much more than I do, and that's good because I have a lot of questions that I want to talk about, clarifications and stuff like that. There will be spoilers in the Dune section.
Spoiler alert.
Yes, but obviously, as it is going to be normal in this series, we want to talk about the fun aspect of it and the kind of the deeper part of it. What is the actual story trying to tell? What is the point of the story? Everything has a point behind it. Practically everything,
Right.
and it's what is that point and where does it come from and all that stuff. So to start off with, I really wanted to kind of talk about the idea of deepen the idea and the understanding, I suppose, our opinion here on what is the basis of everything, right? Last time we talked about a little bit about the origins of everything, of the universe,
Right.
what the Bible says and things like that. And I want to keep talking on those points. I want to keep talking about what it implies, I guess, why the gospel matters, what it is, and how it starts all the way back in the beginning of the universe, the beginning of creation, and why that's so important, as well. I want to talk about that, and I want to talk in general about the idea of God, and then talk about Dune as well, and bring that all in because Dune has some really cool ideas that I want to talk about for sure. But anything you want to include right at the beginning?
No. I think that's a good topic. But I do want to shout out this water bottle that I got when I went to see Dune with your sister.
Yep.
I've never seen this online, but it's a Still Suit water bottle. They only sold it at AMC's, so it's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
it.
It's pretty cool. It is that, and you got it just because you went in, or
Yeah. It just says Dune Part 2 only in theater, so it's like promotional with the theater. So it was just sort of like, oh, I had to buy it, but it was the drink,
Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay, yeah. So if you got a drink, you just that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Okay. So let's start off again in the beginning because it's just eventually we will, I suppose, move past it, quote unquote, just because when I think I said this last time, where it's when I want to talk about anything having to do with Christianity, when anything having to do with God, with Jesus, I always have the I guess need, or I feel as if I need to go all the way back to the beginning, because if you don't, then it's what is this at all? What's the point of any of this, right? Because a lot of Christians, and this is, I guess more targeted towards Christians, where it's just like a lot of Christians say focus on Jesus. And it's like, that's good, right? That in itself is a good thing, yes. But why?
Right.
Why does Jesus matter if there was no need for Jesus at the beginning of time, at the beginning of anything? If all of this is just for show, or all of this is just for some meaningless ultimate existence, then why do I have to worship anybody? Why do I have to worship anything? Even if they're a more powerful being than I? No, it has to be an established story from the beginning, basically.
Right. I think that helps. Yeah, I think part of that is also understanding that everyone has like a worldview, the way they see the world, whether they think it or not. And so sometimes, even in conversations with people, you're saying the same words, but you might have different meanings behind them. You know, when I say God and someone else says God, they're probably meaning two different things, and the ideas about it. So it's that tendency to start from the beginning of what do I believe of the origins and what the Bible says, and it's also getting into why you believe things as a worldview foundation, which comes from what we believe of the origin, and that's key to get out of the way or always bring up even in discussions, because you start realizing sometimes people don't have they're saying the same thing, but they're not meaning the same thing. It's just like, oh, okay, let's take it back to where we're coming from.
That is 100% true, because especially when it's something like the word God, the name God, because that is super generic or very specific, right? Because a lot of people, honestly, are probably not that uncomfortable with the idea of God, but it's okay. Now, what's the specific God, right? Because God could just be a universal consciousness of some sort, you know, and we're all God, and we make up God or something, right? Like, there's different views on that. So that is why, I guess it's when you watch this show, I suppose we're trying to establish we're Christian dudes, right? The Bible is the God of the Bible is the one that we believe is the ultimate real God. So at a point, yes, we're trying to establish that is what we believe, but it's always good to clarify the God of the Bible, right? Because God, who is that? Who is that, or what is that at the end of the day, unless you establish it from the beginning. So the reason that I continually focus on the beginning is because of that. The definitions, the understanding of it, literally just laying out the foundations of what it is we're talking about in the first place. I think I said this or touched on it last time, where it's just the idea, there's a brother Ken Ham where he really doesn't like the terms or what's the word, dogma, repetition, I suppose, of just saying trust in Jesus, trust in Jesus, trust in Jesus, trust in Jesus. But what about this scientific research? Trust in Jesus. But what about this logical thing? Well, trust in Jesus. It's like, yes, it's good to trust in Jesus, but it's okay. Understand that it's not blind. It's not random. It's not random dogma where it's just I will trust even though nothing makes sense. Even though, like, there is answers, there is logical arguments, there is research, there is actual reasons to understand why do I trust in Jesus, because it makes sense. You know, it's not just random. And that is why it's so important to establish what was the truth at the beginning, right? So in Genesis 1 through 3, that is the basic concept, or the basic idea, the story of the universe, right? Humanity. And I'm gonna make a video on this. I'm in the middle of editing it, but hey, maybe I'll just add this and include it right in there, right? But you know, it's just the idea of, at the beginning of time, the beginning of the universe, God made all things, right? God created everything, and within that time period, within the 6 days, he made human beings as well. And those human beings, being made in the image of God, have to have traits of God, basically, like free will, creativity, being able to create, being able to choose, being able to think, being able, all these ideas. Because when I was a kid, I definitely did think that image of God meant that God had hands and feet and was literally like this. But obviously, it meant in the terms of who he is. It meant in the terms of things like thinking, things like individual sovereignty in a sense, right? And free will. From the beginning, it seems like God wanted love and family, right? He wanted a big family, basically. But in order to love God, in order to be part of that family, we have to willingly and of our own free will choose that, because love is impossible with being forced into love. You can't, right? That's not a possible thing. So obviously and I know I'm just repeating the basic creation story here, but humans had that free choice. It goes much further than just, oh, why did everything get cursed? Just because Adam and Eve ate an apple, even though it's not an apple, a fruit of some sort. It's like, no, it goes much further than just the literal action of just eating an apple or eating whatever fruit it is. It's just apple is just the common thing, right? And it goes to, this is the choice between trusting in God and not trusting in God, obeying God and not obeying God, between God being the ultimate authority of what is right and wrong. This is why I go so deep into the idea of morality and truth and things like that, because that was the very first sin, the cardinal sin, right? Yeah. Where it's literally, is God the one that declares this is true, or are you the one that declares this is true? And, well, at the beginning of time, Adam and Eve chose that they were the ones that declared what was true, ultimately. And that is when the very idea, the very concept of sin and corruption entered our physical world. And obviously from that point on, the world and human beings have been in that broken, imperfect state. Because at the beginning, God said, after he created everything, he said, this is good. This is good. And clearly, knowing the character of God, knowing what he declared good, we know that this isn't good. Right. The brokenness, the corruption, the sin, the sickness, the evil in the world, that isn't good. And we only are able to know that because there is a good standard. Point being, as history progressed, God continually reached out over and over to humanity. Humanity constantly cried out, and God always asked for a single thing, which is worship me and no other God. Love me and no other God. That's all it boils down to, right? That's all it boils down to at the end of the day. And God has always been the same God. His methods, I say, have clearly changed, but I think it was always part of the same plan. I'm not gonna go. Maybe we will, but it's because there's just so much to talk about in the sense of this. I'm trying to give like the brief wrap of the gospel here. And obviously, throughout history, humanity continually cried out to God and said, hey, please help us. This is broken. This isn't right. The earth is, in this horrible state. What is true? What is this? It's always the same questions. And God continually reached out and saved his people. And continually, humans failed him over and over again. Until, finally, the original plan, Jesus Christ, right? The unique and only Son of God came down as a human and lived that perfect life, fulfilled the covenant, the old covenant that God established with humanity. If you want to be in union with God, then you must live in this way. You must obey and you must fulfill the covenant. And no human was able to do that. No human was able to be perfect, basically. Jesus Christ was the only one that was able to do that. And through his life and death and resurrection, this was I guess the most monumental event in humanity's history, because it was both physical and spiritual. So many things were happening in this moment where yes, he literally died, he literally resurrected, and through that thing happening, he gave us the life that he lived, he gave to us, right? So he literally lived the perfect life. He fulfilled the old covenant. And that life he gives to us so that we are credited through Jesus Christ that righteousness, that perfect life, right? And that is what Christianity is, in a sense. It is that reunification. And let me know what you think about this, right? Yeah. This is what I've come to understand, I suppose, that Christianity, in its simple terms, is the reunification of oneself with one's creator, right? It's reunifying to the original ideal. Unification with one's creator and being able to finally fulfill your humanity, in a sense, the purpose of life, right? To glorify, and I think I said this last time, where it's like the simple purpose of life is to be in perfect union with one's creator and to glorify and enjoy him forever. And that purpose of life is also just what Christianity is as well, what it's supposed to be. So it is not binding yourself to a set of moral principles, you know, as so many people believe, and as a lot of religions believe, including Catholicism, right? Where this is how you ought to live if you want to be in line with God, if you want God to look at you in a bright light, in a good way. And you have to keep that throughout your entire life, or you will lose it, and you have to go back to confession, and you have to go this and that and blah blah. But it's not that. In its simplest terms, Christianity, the gospel, the good news is that God himself has given you that life, has forgiven your old sins, and given you the new life to be reunified with your creator, and to finally and have that eternal life, which is both literal and, as scripture says, is to know God, right? And the process of that too, because can one truly ever know God? And to know God would take all of eternity, and that is what life is. So you're gonna live forever, you know, like in a literal and spiritual sense.
Yeah, I think the thing that helps too is understanding the role of the Holy Spirit and everything is
yes.
The idea of being in perfect union with God is because we become unified with God through the Holy Spirit indwelling us. So we are, one way the Bible talks about the new life is, you know, we had a heart of stone and given a heart of flesh. So we were dead and then made alive. So something inside of us is different when we come to have that union with God. And that's what we now say is the Holy Spirit indwelling inside of us permanently with believers. And that Holy Spirit is God. So, you know, we believe God exists in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So the Holy Spirit himself, so God himself, it's God's life that is inside of us that gives us that union with him. So that's how we're unified with God. And that's how it's explained, is that when the Holy Spirit's dwelling inside of us, that is our life. But that's the Holy Spirit. So our life is his life. It's kind of blended together, like coffee grounds and water together make coffee. You know, you don't get a cup of, I want a cup of water with coffee grounds. You know, you just say coffee. You just say I want coffee. You know, and it's just, so it becomes one thing. And that's that union with God. Is the Holy Spirit indwelling believers. That also enables us to love God and worship and obey even because, you know, when we have a new heart and we are also given new desires, and that's the thing, is that God will change your desires once he's living inside of you, and that's the thing, is it's explained in the Bible. It's like, you know, that God will give you the desires of your heart means that he will literally give you desires in your heart, you know, not that, you know, not saying that, this is in my heart and God will just give it to me because I want it. It's no, he will give you the desires that are in your heart. And then you'll realize when you are unified with him, right, you're going to be like, wow, I kind of want to do things differently. I kind of want to love God, and I kind of want to do these things. And it's not just brainwashing. It's like an actual desire. You're in a whole different creation, is how, you know, the Bible explains that too, is that, that's a very important aspect of the life of Christ, doing something that we could not do, him crediting us that perfect life and taking the sins that we deserve, the punishment for sins, on himself. So there's that reversal. And then, you know, so the punishment of sin is death. So he died, even though he never sinned, he took the punishment of it. But when that resurrection happened, that's a new life. That's that resurrected life. And it's that spirit that lives inside of Jesus that's from that resurrection that's given to us when we trust in him. So that life that's inside of us is eternal, literally, logically, because, if the punishment for sin was death, and that already happened. So that new life doesn't have to die again because that punishment was happened. So by logic alone, it's like that new life that raised Christ that's given to us is eternal because that punishment's already been paid on this side of the cross. So that's that union with Christ of a believer, is that the Holy Spirit indwells the believer, and that our life is that life inside of us. But,
and that's why it's just, I guess, to touch on the idea as well, just that's why the beginning is so important, because it's, why does any of this matter if the universe was just randomly spawned and there is no God, or God is just part of nature along with everything else? It's, well, this is just pretty ideas, I suppose, but at the end of the day,
and you kind of mentioned that too, is that like you know, if you talk to someone like a Hindu or anyone that's a polytheist that believe in a lot of God, you're like, oh, you know, God's inside my, okay, that's fine, because for them, certain claims aren't as foreign to them because they just believe. But understanding that when we're talking about Jesus and God, like that's in the worldview of the Jews, right? That's the, for someone claiming to be God for a Jew is blasphemy. So because they point their origins, you know, they go all the way back to Genesis and of how God has revealed himself. And then here comes Jesus making these claims. Like, if it wasn't a Jew, if this was happening in somewhere else, in some other religion where everyone just says, yeah, I'm God. Like, if Jesus came and said, I'm God, I'm like, okay, you know, that. But the fact that he came in this context and said, I'm God, was blasphemy to them, you know. And that's what we're saying, is that, like, the only reason why that's shocking is because the Jews understood their origin of who God was and who God revealed himself to be to them. So that's why it's important to understand that context, because again, like another religion would have been like, all right, that's not too much of a claim that we say whatever, but and then for him it was shocking to say those things. And I think of C.S. Lewis, who wrote Narnia and Mere Christianity and a lot of other things, a great author. You know, the very famous quote that he had in Mere Christianity was, Jesus didn't leave any room for you to just say, oh, he's a good teacher. Right?
Exactly.
You can't just look at Jesus and be like, oh, he's a good man, he's a good teacher. You know, I don't think he's God, but he's a good teacher. It's like he didn't leave you any room for that, because he claimed to be God, right? And the idea is, like, would you call anyone a good teacher today if they're like, oh, he's a good guy, he gives good advice, he just claims to be God, you know? And it's just sort of like, well, no, that's actually pretty out there, to also claim to be God and to have the ability to forgive sins, you know. And
you call him crazy, or
right, and that's the thing. That's what he said. He either, it's the logic is he's either a liar, a lunatic, or Lord. He's a liar, meaning he's claiming to be God and he's actually not God. He's a lunatic, meaning he claims to be God and thinks he's God, but he's not. But he's not. Or he's Lord, like he's claiming to be God and he is God. Like, those are the only logical conclusions. So there's no room for, oh, he was just a good guy. He's either a liar, he's crazy, or he's actually God. And those are the implications when you actually look at who Jesus was, what he said. When you're looking at the Bible, it's like there is no wishy-washiness about it.
And obviously, I think that all points to kind of to the all-knowing nature of God, right? To choose specific people, a specific culture, to go through this where it matters, it makes the most impact, where he knows kind of, I guess, the minds of people before they even think, right? So he knew kind of where it was going to matter the most and what people groups, I suppose. Because again, kind of going back to what you said just a second ago, or just a while ago, with the idea of what was it? Where it's just of our free will, right? Again, of choosing either to accept the life of Christ or not, right? It's going back to the original design. Again, it's the same thing, and that is kind of what the Bible as a whole is pointing to, right? It's pointing to Jesus, and it's pointing to the New Eden, New Earth.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah, the way the Bible starts, think of like the Bible. There's creation, there's God. It's perfect union between God and man on this perfect place. And then the rest of the Bible is like, we blew it, and how do we get back to that? And that's the entire history of the Israelites, the entire gospel of Jesus coming himself, and it's literally just to restore us to that original relationship with God. So when you even look at the Bible, even though there's 66 books in the Bible written over thousands of years, you know, it begins with Adam and Eve, like man and woman, and God in the garden, but it ends, the last book in Revelation is also gives that picture of a new heavens and new earth, which is humans and God in union with one another in a perfect restored creation. So it's we're always trying to go back to Eden. In a sense. It's like that idea of going back to God, and that's what the narrative of the Bible is our relationship with God has gone astray. Here's how he's dealing with humanity until he's going to restore everything. And that's what we're living in today still.
Exact same. And I mean, it's a beautiful story, because yes, it's meant, and this is why I always say that Christianity is exclusive, and like you were just saying, that Jesus left no room to either say, you know, he's a good teacher or this, he's either Lord, lunatic, or a liar. And the reason I'm saying that is just, oh my goodness, I'm like losing my train of thought right now. Literally, I'm like losing my train of thought. We're saying, oh yeah. So that's why I'm saying that, like, Christianity is a very exclusive idea, a very exclusive belief. And that's why people don't like it, right? Because this is true and nothing else is, in a sense, right? All truth would be God's truth. And it doesn't mean that you're dumb or that you're absolutely wrong in every aspect, because we have remnants of God's goodness within us, right? So we all know certain basic things. Again, the ideas of morality, where it's just naturally people know certain things like rape, murder, torture are bad. You don't have to teach anybody that. But it's who ultimately declares that, right? And in order to have ultimate truth, you have to have exclusivity. This is the ultimate truth, and nothing else is true outside of this. And the reason I would say something like Christianity is the only, I mean, it's the only hope. Jesus is the only hope. Because when I say Christianity, I know people have, I know that people have certain things tied up with the word Christianity. They think of a church, they think of a religion, they think of, you know, organized
sometimes crazy people.
Crazy, exactly. Just crazy people that spew nonsense and then just say the word Jesus in there somewhere, and then it's all right. So, but the reason that I say that is because Christianity is just so exclusive, and the idea goes far beyond just a religion, just a even just a belief system. It is that reunification with God, and it's the only real hope, I would say, for anything. Because the way that I've thought through it really is everything will boil down to a few questions, and everything's going to boil down to what happened at the beginning, right? I've said that many times. And either there is no God, there is a God, or there is a God and it's not the God of the Bible, right? Those are, again, some of the big three ideas. Maybe there's a fourth of just generic cosmic consciousness, right? But those are generally the big ideas, and it boils down even further down just to, is there God, is there no God? If there's no God, then everything is arbitrary. The universe is random, the universe has no real meaning, you're an animal, and again, it's your opinion versus other people's opinion when it comes to morality. Science, mathematics could be right today and could change in 100 years. Things change constantly. Nothing is solid. Nothing is really objective or permanent, because eventually everyone dies. No matter how much change you make in your lifetime and how much quote unquote hope you give yourself, whatever that may be, if there's no ultimate purpose, I would say it's just lying to yourself. I know I'm being blunt and like sound like an anime villain, but it's like if there's no ultimate God, then it's all just lying to yourself. It's in vain. Because even if you say, you know, I'm gonna change the world, and even if you theoretically do, how long will it take for one corrupt person to destroy everything you've ever done? Or for an earthquake to destroy the good thing you've done, the earth to explode, the sun to explode, and at the end of the day, what was really the meaning? Because you're dead, right? Or B, there is a God, but it's not the God of the Bible. So this God expects perfection that we will never achieve. So now that may be worse than having no God and everything is meaningless, because now there's an evil, all-powerful entity that we have no hope in, and we're doomed to just be in eternal suffering, right? That's why I say that the God of the Bible, A, is the most logical and consistent from the beginning, but is also the only one that actually gives hope in any sense of the matter, because that ultimate God that has that perfect standard did all that himself. He came down and gave us that new life and gave us that perfect life that we cannot live.
Yeah, I think also, you know, when you're just looking at religions in general, because it's just like, okay, yeah, I can understand something has to be true, but then it's like, how do you know the Bible's true?
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of it is this wasn't made up. Like this is historical evidence. We're still digging stuff up that's verifying everything in the Bible. The Jews are still here. You know what I mean? Like they're still there. Like they came from somewhere, you know, and it's just sort of like, so, you know, it's just one of those things where it's not make-believe, hopeful thinking. Like when you say hope, it's actually grounded in a reality of everyone's pretty much in agreement that Jesus of Nazareth was a real person.
Yes.
Where's his body? You know what I mean? Like where's all this stuff that if it had such an impact, it had such an impact on humanity, like you would think they would know where he died and was buried, and that's one of those things where it's like, or what we have in the Bible is true, that he resurrected and ascended to be with God, you know, and so it's not hope. Hope is not just I wishful thinking. It's grounded in things that may be unseen but are still real. And you can look at your own personal experience of how God has brought you through things, or you can even look at, and I should say, you can look at just the historical events that actually occurred, right? And that's a big difference than just saying like, oh, I just believe in a religion, and the idea of like,
or a cult,
right? Yeah, or
say I saw this, and then
we just saw a movie about a cult, and it was out there, but the idea that absolute truth, right? Like there has to be something outside of us that is defining what is right and wrong. That is logic, you know. That's and people can deny that and be like, well, there's no such thing as truth and things like that, but like the statement itself is illogical. Like if you say there's no such thing as truth, that statement, like, is that statement true? Is that true that there's no such thing as truth? And you have to say, well, yeah, that's true. Okay, then there's a such thing as truth. There's a such thing as truth that we all have to adhere to. So there, you know, and that's what I'm saying, without God, things fall apart. People may just kind of be like, oh, you're just saying that because you're religious. It's like, well, what we mean is that without absolutes outside of us truth, things will fall apart. And that's logic. That's logic alone. Because then it becomes, you know, like we say, like it's relativity, and it's just like, well, I just think this is right because I think of it. Like, well, what if when you don't think it's right? You know, it's like it's like I think it's okay.
When the whole government thinks
right.
It's
right. I think everyone should be nice to each other and believe what they want to believe. And you can just be like, well, I believe it's right to just mug you and take all of your stuff. I'm like, well, you can't do that. Like,
why not? You just why not? It makes me happy. Like,
and it's just, and that's the thing. There has to be something outside of us that we can both point to say one of us is closer to whatever we consider right. And it's interesting because all of us, because going back to what you were saying, have carried this image of God. Every single human being, not just Christians, but like everyone has an image of, all human beings are made in the image of God, which means we all carry with us inside of our hearts some idea of right and wrong. And you'll see across cultures relatively the same ideas of right and wrong. Sure, there's cultural things like dress and food, but like in the sense of like, no culture that I know of still believes that it's honorable to just murder anybody and steal their wife. You know what I mean? Like they're like, that's like, you'd be hard pressed if at all. There's some place where they're like, that's a great thing. You know, it's like, it's like, no, stealing is bad pretty universally. And where did that come from type of thing? And, so there's a sense that humans can know good and evil to an extent apart from God, right? Apart from believing that God exists. But again, from our worldview, it's because we understand that every human being carries within them the image of God.
Exactly.
So it to us that still fits in that same framework of course you can understand good and evil because you're made in the image of God. And but when you start to deny a God and objective reality outside of you, then you really have no basis again for understanding good and evil, because it just, again, it always is going to boil down to the same things. I think this is right just because I think it's right, or because it works. Well, who cares what works? Like, why can't the Nazis do this? You know, it's like they think it works. You know,
exactly.
And there has to be something outside of all of that we are comparing. That we're comparing ourselves to, and that's great thinkers alike. So even Nietzsche, who's famous for, or Nietzsche, however you pronounce it. I know it made me look bad just for mispronouncing his name, but like the whole
everything
thing,
you say is wrong.
I know, it's just
Nietzsche.
like, but the idea is like, you know, he's famous for writing like God is dead, right? And the idea that God is dead, like if you keep reading what he wrote, he says now that God is dead, we're like a planet that has been taken out of orbit around a sun, and we're just gonna wander aimlessly going wherever because there's nothing that we're revolving around. And it's just, he even acknowledged that without an objective type of reality, we're just gonna do whatever we want to do. He still, sure, he didn't believe the God of the Bible, but like there was still an understanding, if you take it logically to its conclusion, if there's no outside reality, then it's anything is on the table. And that's what we don't. But then it's like, well, why aren't people evil all the time as much as they can be? It's like, again, I think we all carry within us an idea of right and wrong, and you can sear your conscience. You know, it's possible to be like, this is right or wrong.
We have free will.
I'm going to ignore all these things that are telling me this is wrong. And yes, you can sear your conscience and keep going a completely other direction, but
callous your heart.
But so that's where that all comes together, is there's a reality that we live in, and if we deny that, we start denying the reality that we live in, and it doesn't even make sense if you sit there and think about it. And that's where I just feel like a lot of people's thinking, and this is even in the church too, is very surface level.
I agree.
Well, I believe this or I don't believe that. Like you said, like I believe in Jesus because I believe in Jesus, but without understanding the foundations of how thought and reality even work. It just turns into, I just believe it because I believe it. And you might be right. Yeah, a kid can believe in God.
Yeah,
like, that's absolutely true.
And there's a respectable like beauty in that.
Yes,
the scriptures points to it as well.
Yes. And but the idea is that even those who do not believe in God, it's surface level, because it the surface is, I just want to do what I want to do. And if you get beyond that and say, okay, well, is this right or wrong? You can't tell me what to do. And it's whatever personal reason that they reject or don't reject certain things. It just comes down to wanting to do what you want to do. And what we would say is becoming your own God. I'm determining what's right and wrong. And that goes back to that Adam and Eve in the garden, is ultimately what was happening is God said this, and mankind said, well, I want to say this.
Exactly.
And you just, and it's man putting themselves in the place of God. And that makes disorder across of everything, because that's what we're seeing today, is when you remove that and put man in the place of God, it doesn't work because we're not God. We didn't make objective reality.
I believe.
I digress.
No, I believe all logic points to God at the end of the day. Logic, just the more I contemplate on it, it's just, some people would call me like really religious for saying this, but it's just everything points to and is about God. Because it's literally when you think logically, scientifically, mathematically, emotionally, even spiritually, philosophically, morally, everything points back to there has to have been a God. Logically. And that's one of the big things that I want to just, I guess, do in my life and with this channel, is I want to separate that stigma of God as a religious term. You know what I mean? Right, like God, the second you say the name of God or just God, some people immediately be like, oh, okay, that's a religious guy. He doesn't, this is a religious opinion or whatever. Because scientists and, the powers that be and have done such a good job at creating that. At saying no, all things must be explained in this way. They cannot be beyond nature.
Secular science.
Secular scientists,
yes. Science.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, scientists, yes. And that's what I'm saying, right? Because science is a good thing. Mathematics could be a good thing.
Most sciences started in the church.
Exactly.
It was people trying to understand how God created the universe, and that's where modern science comes from.
The opposite of God is disorder and chaos. So the God is order. God is logic. So that's why I say that everything just points back to God. It's if you genuinely think logically, as objectively as you could be, right? Because everyone has biases and everyone should be aware of that. As objectively, quote unquote, as you can. If you simply think, how does logic exist? How does morality exist? How do I exist? How does the universe exist? God just makes the most logical sense. And the Bible is the most consistent, I believe, belief system, I guess, in the world.
Right. I think you touched on something important, is that, like, I'm biased. I know I'm biased. So I will openly say I am biased towards the reality of God. What's the tricky is that when people think I'm not biased.
Yes.
And they don't understand that they still are funneling things through a worldview.
Yes.
And it's just like, well, you have that because you come from this, and I'm unbiased. It's like, well, no, you still have a bias. It's just like, but I acknowledge that I have a bias. Yes. I know what my biases are, and I'm open to hearing anything, obviously. But but it's what's tricky is getting people don't believe they have a bias or a worldview. To actually understand that is a worldview. It's like, I don't have a worldview. I don't believe there's anything. It's like, well, that is a worldview. The worldview that you don't have a worldview is a worldview. And that's usually the tricky thing. So whereas most people who are believers in God or even any religion, they understand they have a bias. I am Mormon. I am Hindu. Whatever. Like, they understand they're filtering through that world. So which is why like religions of the world get painted that way, because at least they know they're filtering the reality around them through whatever practices have been laid out in front of them.
That's a good point.
It's usually the secular humanists that believe they don't have a worldview, and
that they've come to understand.
Correct. Right. Which is a worldview, and it's like I always think of that illustration I remember reading in a Tim Keller book. I don't remember which one, but he was saying that it's like the blind people and the elephants. If a bunch of blind people touched an elephant, they would feel different things, and someone feels the trunk, and they're like, oh, it's an elephant's like a tree, and someone feels the leg, and someone feels the tail, and they're like, oh no, an elephant's like a rope, and someone feels the side, like, oh, an elephant's like a wall. And then they would say, like, see, that's all the religions being blind and not knowing what an elephant is. But for that illustration to even work, you have to say, I know what an elephant is, and they're all wrong, but I know what an elephant is. I know what absolute truth is. And it's just that disconnect of someone saying, I don't believe in any religion, so everyone's that blind person feeling the elephant, but I see the elephant. It's like, bruh.
Exactly, it's literally being...
So there's no absolute truth, but you have absolute truth, and then you can determine what's true about it. Okay.
And that's the typical story of humanity. It's literally always saying, I'm right. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize how recent, on the grand scheme of things, right, the idea of humanist and like natural, what was the word? Naturalist?
Like naturalistic worldview. Yeah.
Where it's that secular idea of no God and evolution and these ideas. I feel like a lot of people don't realize these are very recent on the grand scheme of things. It's for thousands of years of humanity existing. God and gods were just the normal thing, like the idea of something beyond the physical world. And every single generation would always think, every culture, every generation would say, we're better than the last and we're smarter and we understand now, And it's always going to be these same ideas of, how come you get to declare that now we finally have understood what is true and what is right? And it's without that objective beginning, then again, it's opinions. And actually, talking on just the idea of objectivity and the idea of God, I feel like that's a good segue into Dune. Because
everything is a good segue into Dune for me.
You can make it work. We'll make it work no matter what. Because so I did go watch Dune Part 2, and I did enjoy it, right? But there's definitely things that I need you to explain.
Yeah.
Because I'm a non-book reader. He is the book reader, and I know in the past he said, and I could definitely start to see it here in the book 2 or in the movie 2 Part 2. The ideas starting to very much come to the forefront of.
Spoiler alerts, by the way.
Yes, very spoiler. Yeah, by the way, Dune 2 spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I should have said that again. Yeah. But you could very much see the ideas coming to the forefront of ultimate power, of who is ultimately in charge. And again, this always goes back to the ideas of who gets to play God, basically, and who is God, and is God real? So, what are your takes on Part 2? Yeah, I want to hear.
The movie itself is cinematically gorgeous. The visuals,
it is great.
The music, Hans Zimmer zimmered. You know what I mean? Like he knocked it out of the park. It's half the movie is the sounds. And so it is beautiful. The pace is great. The new characters they introduce in the movie are phenomenal. It's great. It's a beautiful movie. And I see Dune 1 and 2 as technically one movie.
Okay.
Because it's one book? It's the first book. Okay. Yeah, it's the first book. So they're really one long movie is how I see it.
So you're predicting there's going to be like, how many movies?
So he said he wanted to do 3 movies. But the third movie would be on the second book. But the second book is like way shorter than the first one. So you can do it in one movie. You can do it in one movie. Looking at the book, Dune 1, even if you read Dune 1 itself, you're not gonna get as much as the themes that the movie helped pull out about like religion and stuff like that. It usually takes a reader reading book 2 to look back on the book 1 to realize, oh, wait a minute. Which is what I appreciated about Denis Villeneuve, the director, was he told the story of Dune book 1 the way it's supposed to be interpreted from reading the later books. So it's very clear there's that struggle of power. Because the way it was written was you read book 1 and it ends and you're like, oh, I cheered for Paul and that's it. He's great. He won. And then you realize later in the books that, okay, maybe I shouldn't have been cheering for him. Yeah. Whereas in this movie, it's a little more clear. So he's telling the intent and purpose of the books in the movie early on, which is great.
That's something I want to talk about right there. Sorry for cutting you off, but it's literally like, again, big spoilers, and I'm fine. I already said that I'm fine with it being, spoiled, because by the time it comes out, I'll probably forget anyways, and it'll still be awesome.
It's still a great movie to see, regardless. Exactly. I read the book and I knew the story, and I feel like, and I'm still blown away.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like even if you tell me, I feel like if anything, it might give me even more insight when I watch it, because now that I'm seeing the way that Dune is played out, like
it's a thoughtful movie that it takes rewatching, and the more you rewatch it, the more it becomes better.
I could definitely understand that. Because even though it was like 2.5 hours, the first half still felt like it was like it almost felt like it was like you close your eyes and we're somewhere else. Like, oh my goodness, we're moving quick. But the reason that I stopped you right there is because I was like, I could clearly tell I am confused with Paul. Me and my friend Eric, we went and watched it, and we were definitely confused because he was doing some Doctor Strange stuff, being like, I see all the timelines, but there's only one way through. Because he was so adamant, right, about, I'm not going to start this holy war. I'm not going to have billions die for me. I'm not going to do it. And then as soon as he drank that water, what is it called?
Yeah, the water of life.
Yeah, the water of life. As soon as he drank that and then like did the Doctor Strange, all of a sudden he's like, all right, well, I'm going straight for it. And I was like, does he have something? Like, I'm like, he's still the main character, obviously, here, but I'm like, are we still behind him here? Like, does he have something bigger in mind since he has the whole future that he saw? I'm even predicting something like, because he said to Chani right before the emperor came in and everything, he literally was like, I'll love you till the end of till I die or whatever, right? And I was like, okay. And then he asked for the other daughter in marriage or whatever, and I was like, okay, does he have some major big brain plan? And even to the point where maybe he sees that the only way forward is for him to become evil and die, or something like that. Yeah. Like I don't know. Big spoilers again, but
because the movie's not the next movie won't come out for who knows when.
Yeah,
they haven't even greenlit.
Exactly,
so I'll go ahead and divulge.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think they conveyed very clearly is that Paul and Chani are in love. Like they're
that was the whole beginning.
Yes, and she's very much like, you are. I see your genuineness, and everyone wants you to be something else, right?
Yeah.
And he's reaffirming, you know who I truly am, but I have this weight and responsibility, and I've been literally breeded to be the one that can see the future and all of this stuff. And so in that part, a couple things is in the movie, he tells her right then, I will love you as long as I breathe.
Yeah.
And then when he tells the princess, I'll take your hand. So this is all political. He wants the legitimate rule of the emperor, and that's done through marriage. He mentioned that in the first movie too. He's like, I'll ask the daughter's hand in marriage, and so all of this stuff. So in the books though, at that moment he says, I'll have your hand in marriage, but you will not have me. I will be married to. So it's one of those things where he was very clear that like, this is all political. He's very clear about it being political. So in the movie, obviously, Chani gets upset and leaves. Yeah. But, and Danae made a very good point, your sister, was that, like, we don't actually see her getting on a worm and leaving. We just see her call a worm and struggle.
True. That's true.
So we never actually saw her left.
Okay, yeah.
In the movie, too, in the same movie, we see when Paul takes the water of life, she's like, what are you doing? That same struggle that was the end shot, she has there. Like, where he wakes up, and she's like, I'm okay, you're okay, I love you. Yeah. But then she looks at him for a long period of time before she slaps him and leaves. So I think he's trying to visually show she can struggle with his love and what he's doing, but still be by his side. Yeah. It's just the movie kind of ends abruptly. Yes. But I will say this, the first book has the most abrupt ending ever. Like, it literally, the last scene in the book is the movie. Is the book, he goes, I will take your hand, but you won't be my, and it's like book end, and it's like what? So it's just sort of like, so he actually captured that well. So I don't think, which is, again, if you're not reading the book, you think that he just dissed Chani. He's I love you, but no, I don't. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I assumed it was political, because especially if you tell her right before and then they enter, and then you're like, okay,
and that's what I'm saying. So that's why I hoped people gathered too. So you were right. You're right in that. The other thing is a lot of what Paul is struggling with is, you see it from the first one. He's glimpsing the future. He sees alternate futures too. He can see one where, like, he dies in the battle and whatnot. And once he takes the water of life, it completely opens his mind. He can completely see what Force sees. Right. The thing is, what he sees is, and this is later in the books, is he can see the ultimate path for humanity that will lead to destruction. Ultimately. Yeah. And the only way to avoid that ultimate path to ultimate destruction of humanity.
So most of them lead to ultimate destruction.
Yeah. So the only way to avoid that path of ultimate destruction is for him to take on the mantle that he didn't want to do and go to the south and become this person. So it's interesting, because it's like, he's like, either all of humanity dies or just billions of people die. So it's just sort of like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm going to be responsible for this holy war that's going to wipe out entire planets and billions of people, or all of humanity dies. And that kind of comes out later, because, so you see in the movie where when he's saying all of this, like, oh, take him to paradise and all, it's sad music. It's sad, and he's looking down. Even he doesn't want to do it.
Yes, right? Even Stelgar, that's his name, right?
Stelgar, yeah.
He like, I don't know if it was intentional, but there was like a moment where it was like, I couldn't tell if it was excitement or fear, like or whatever, because he was like, and then he went, like it's like he really just said that, and then it's like, all right, let's go.
So for Paul, it's a sadness, because he doesn't want to be the one responsible for these billions of people dying. So that comes up later, because eventually, again, spoiler alert, the books have been out for decades. So I mean, I read the books. But, But Paul and Chani have a son. Okay. And technically they have a daughter too. They have two kids. Well, there was a kid that they left out in the first movie. Like she had a baby that was his. More time happened in the books than in the movie. In the movies, it was
I assume that's why the beginning already felt like it was like moving.
Yeah,
really
so the movie did it like it happened to me. Everything happened to me. In the books, years past, he was living with the Fremen for years.
Yeah, I kind of got the gist of it. I don't know if I got years, but I definitely got a long time.
Yeah. It was much longer
for him
in
to
the
become
books.
brother or like official Fremen. You know?
So he had a kid that passed away, and the attack where they finally attacked the rocks, you know, and everyone, like his kid died in that one, but it was a baby. So that was one thing. But he actually has twins in the second book, and one of the twins, one of the boys, they're also born for seeing like the way the way his sister is in this movie. They're naturally
because that's a whole new thing too.
Yeah, that's a whole the sister's a big character.
I'd assume so.
Really
she seemed,
character, yes.
and I was confused on that, and I was confused on the. The baby.
Yes,
because it was like the baby was being evil or like talking to the mother and being like kill them all. Or...
So the baby when Jessica takes the water of life, the baby awakens and becomes aware with all the memories of generations.
Oh, so that's
she's
why...
that whole Reverend Mother, like you gain the memories of all the people.
Yes, because the old lady was like, "What have we done? She's pregnant," and then
because the baby is now awakened, and that's an abomination. That's where the word abomination comes from in the movie. It's like that's not allowed. You shouldn't be pregnant. You just awakened a fetus that has no idea of reality into generations of memories.
Dang.
So now this baby is fully aware. So in the books, the girl's born and she's a toddler, but is already reasoning and walking like a full grown Reverend Mother.
Yeah,
so,
I'd assume that's something like that.
So that's hard to put in a movie. So they just kept her in the belly and made it faster. You know what I mean?
So she was already born in the book.
Yeah. In the book, she was born as a toddler.
So I feel
in the book. Yeah.
So I assume that probably in the next movie she's already going to be a toddler.
Yeah, because you were either going to do a CGI 2-year-old that can be a grown up, or just do what they did, and I appreciate they did what they did. But so what happens is his kid ends up being the real promised one that rules everything.
Paul's kid or the daughter?
Paul's kid.
Oh, okay.
So the daughter has a lot of. What happens is the daughter being born that way and part of the all Fremen religion becomes revered and worshipped. So now they're worshiping Paul like he's the Muad'Dib, he's the Lisan al-Gaib, all of these things, right? And then now he has a sister that's was born a Reverend Mother. Yes. So everyone sees them as like these gods on earth, right? But we see how it happened, you know? Yeah. But the thing is that the whole next storyline is they're accepting that mantle, but also are aware of who they are. Like we're just doing this for. We're just a bower. What are we gonna do? Give it to someone else?
Literally.
And what happens is the son that gets born is also born fully aware, but it wasn't because no one drank. It just had naturally happened.
Yeah.
He's actually the one that will fully become what everyone was prophesying towards. Like he's the full, almost godlike human that becomes the ruler of everything in a way that he accepts worship as God, and he's ruling with an iron fist. He has all the power.
Oh, okay.
He has complete control and spice. Because again, major spoiler alert, and this might. When I first read this, I thought it ruined the books, but then I read the next book, and it was the most brilliant way they handled it. The son actually merges with the worm. The sandworm. So, what that does is it endows him. The way he does it is he takes the infant worms and puts it on his skin, and they basically just absorb into his body and change the structure of his body. That's basically all it is. So it's a good, reasonable reason. Okay. It's just that you basically get the worm membrane, and it just merges with the body.
Yeah, it's gonna get crazy then.
Right. but all that happened was that enabled him to have literal physical strength, and he would not die unless he was killed. And he became like the worm, the being that creates the spice that the world runs on. So he became became the ultimate pinnacle of every. He literally was now the source of spice, the source of power, the source of this religion. So the son becomes such a big character that you're sort of like, Paul, who's Paul? You know what I mean? Like, it's that big of a difference in the later books that Paul's like some nobody, and the son is the one who's fully explaining most of the story. Is that this is something that no one would want to become a worm, to live thousands of years. He lives thousands of years. It's a burden on him to have this absolute power, and you see the internal struggle, which is why I think the books are brilliant. Like the fourth book of the series
is the son
this is the son's main book. It's the struggle of him being human and lonely and aware of what he's doing, even though the world hates him and worships him, because he had to do that because they can see the future to see. This is how humanity ultimately survives. Yes. Because they saw a future where if this didn't happen, all of humanity would be wiped out of existence through different means, right? So it's almost like what I like about it is that it's almost like an antichrist figure, literally.
Literally.
Instead of God becoming a human being, it's more of this human being becoming a God, right? Yep. And it's a complete reversal of everything. But still, it was him being burdened of no one should want to do this. I didn't want to do this, but it's the only way to self-sacrifice in a sense for the betterment of humanity. So but the point is, in that book, there's a character that's like Chani in the movie, where there's always someone that's like, I don't worship you. I don't care who you are. Why are you
someone he actually cares
someone
about.
he actually cares about. And I think they actually took that character. Her name is Siona in the book. And modeled the Chani of the movie after that. Because in the books, in the first book, Chani doesn't really have that many dialogue. You know they're in love, but she's not that prominent of a character. But if you're looking at the whole series, they kind of made Siona from the fourth book into Chani. And it's like this idea, there's someone speaking sense into this person. But what happens is, what I like about the books, so it gets crazy.
I could tell. I mean, I'd love to all this information.
But what I like about the books is that it always pointed to who, and this is the point of the fourth book too, is that like when it comes, there's a quote in there that says, when it comes to leadership, who gets to play God?
Yep.
Because the whole point of that was, what do we want? We want someone, human beings always want to rule the world, right? Yep. And then let's say you ruled the world, then what? That's kind of the point of the book. It's like, this guy he's the king of everything. He literally won't die. He's worshipped by everyone. Then what? Do you get what I'm saying? Who does he look at as ultimate reality? Like, what is his basis for truth? And that's what it comes down to, is like, who gets to play God for him, know? And for him, in the books, he's explaining, like, just my ability to see the future enables me the rights to do this, even though he wouldn't go that far. He says that, but also says, like, that, I mean, it's not a good explanation, but that's what it is. He's the only one that's able to do that. But at the same time, it's like... And
it's like, who is he, in the sense, like, how come...
Like, why do you get to decide?
Yes, exactly. And like, what if somebody else who wants to just rule and be cruel, then
so a lot of the themes in the book talk about politics and religion. To me, as a Christian reading it, apart from God, right? So it's like, here's what religions look. You watch the movie and you see like the religion and the prophecy was all created by this other group.
Yes.
So a conclusion could be...
That's something I wanted to talk about.
A conclusion could be, well, all these religions are man-made and someone's doing it for power, so all the people who believe are fools, right? But me, who believes in God, can look at that and still say, well, a man-made religion is made for power, but that's not ultimate truth in reality.
There's still power there beyond
correct,
that.
there's still a real God, and that's part of the thing, is that like there's a lot of layers that the movie captured well, is... You think it's House versus House Harkonnen versus House Atreides, but really, ultimately, it's the religion of the Fremen. Their prophecies being fulfilled, but then again, their prophecies were created by the women, the Bene Gesserit.
Yes.
But the thing is that they couldn't control that either. So there's a lot of layers going on.
And that's something I want to talk about. Like, what's more in depth on the Bene Gesserit? Bene Gesserit. Because it was an awesome scene that I did like, friggin' when the Bene Gesserit came in with the Emperor and all that.
Yes,
and he's like, you abomination. Or like, if you keep saying this, it's silence. Dude, and she like fell over. It was like, okay, finally somebody shut her up for a second, just in that moment. But point is, what is that? Like, because everything is human, right? Yeah. And this advanced technology, but spice clearly has some type of mystical, or maybe they could explain it in some natural way where time is a physical thing or a physical realm where you're able to see, blah blah blah, right? Point being is, where do the Bene Gesserit get this power and this understanding and that voice?
Yeah. So the spice has different properties. It allows Paul to see the future, not necessarily anybody to see the future. Because and this is the Bene Gesserit are basically Nazis in a sense, where they were big into eugenics. They're like, you breed with this person to breed with this person. And they capture that in the movie because they are controlling behind the scenes all the houses. They don't care about the power. They only care about breeding to this perfect being that will take power over everyone.
And they want to control that.
And they wanted to control that person. So the thing is, with the Bene Gesserit, they all have that Reverend Mother thing. So they all undergo a transformation somehow, and they convey that in the movie. Like, it's different everywhere you go. So it takes taking in a poison that you are trained to have such control over your body, you can change the molecular structure, and that will unlock, like, you're in a sense bringing yourself from death to life by fixing the poison. But that unlocks genetic memories, right? So the Bene Gesserit are able to, when they become a full Reverend Mother, access generations of memories of their genetic code and whatnot.
Paul's mom is now like rogue, right?
Yes.
She's like, she's still Bene Gesserit, but she's like rogue, and she's because they became different factions at the end there. Okay, I can tell you.
So ultimately, the Reverend Mother is willing to step aside and call her Reverend Mother.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because she knows. So and this is the books kind of explain that more, is that, like, especially in the books, when the son becomes power, they're like, we'll just sit this one out for a couple thousand years. They're like that. They're like, we'll just wait 1,000 years, and you'll be gone, and then we'll be still here. You know, so they're very willing to be patient because they can carry all those memories going forward. So the plans, you can set plans thousands of years down the line, which is what they did. And so the thing is, they ultimately were playing God, because what they did was, looking at all the planets where humans live, they planted religions, religious beliefs on different planets that cater to the people of those planets. And all of the religions that they planted would lead into a Messiah figure that they already knew would be that one they bred out that could see the future and whatever. And you see that with the Fremen, right? With the Fremen.
No, there was very clear, like, what is it, parallels for, like, Christianity and like even Islam and, like, ideas and religions like that. I mean, they've even said, the coming of the Messiah, like, he is the Al-Hayy, what is it?
Lisan Al-Gaib.
Al-Gaib, Al-Gaib. Dude.
So that's the thing, is that so when you're looking at it, the movie's even conveying who gets to play God.
Seriously,
is it the emperor that has all power? Is it these women?
The emperor literally seems. At no point did I feel like the emperor was like, "Oh, he's a big threat," or something like that.
So that's the whole thing, is that, like, the books convey humanity apart from God. Everyone's vying for power, and everyone's looking to get that leg up on everyone else. And the way the Bene Gesserit doing are literally creating religions to get that power. So in a way, they're literally trying to play God. Because it's like, I'm God who's setting prophets. So think of our reality. God sent prophets to speak, about the future Messiah that's going to come. They're like, we can do that. I'll make a religion that has these prophecies. But since we have the generational memories, we can wait that out, and then we can structure someone. So that's why when in the first movie, when he's like, when Paul's like, is there nothing that could be done for Paul? The Reverend Mother in the first movie says, like, we've done all we can. Now it depends on if he can survive on that planet, because it's a trap has been set. Can he survive? And Paul and Jessica knew that religion was waiting for a Messiah, and that's why you even see in the first movie, Paul hates he found out later in life that his mom's been training him to fill this role, and he's like, oh my God, they just believe what you want them to believe and all of that. So
you could tell. That's what I said, that the beginning of the movie, that's why that switch was so, like, abrupt, or like so, like, different. The whole beginning was I'm not gonna be this Messiah, I'm not this, I'm not that, and then
that's the thing about Paul too, is that there's that element of, I don't want to do this. It is heartbreaking, but he still did it.
Yeah.
And that's it really comes down to he still did it. He still took the power, regardless of what his emotions were. And it shows like the nuances of people that rule, which I appreciate. But he still did it.
Yep.
And so the idea is that like they plant the religion, then they make the Messiah, but they can control it. But what happens in the book, and this is what I like the books, is that like I feel like, and this is me reading into the book, is that the thing that thwarted everyone's plan consistently was love. Jessica loved the Duke in the first, loved him, and he wanted a son because the Bene Gesserit can control whether it's a boy or a girl.
Of course.
And they only breed girls because it's the Bene Gesserit are all women and all this stuff because it's intentional the way they're breeding it.
Yeah.
But she loved the Duke and he wanted a son, so that's why she gave birth to Paul, and that was the wild card that kind of showed the Bene Gesserit you don't have control. So I look at that and be like, yes, love is, God is love. Love is the thing that thwarts human planning and all of that stuff. Yeah. And even the son in the fourth book, he has absolute rule, but the thing that allows him to basically be killed is he falls in love. And now the person he falls in love was again kind of manufactured to make him fall in love, and he knew that, but like it's still the idea of like love is what's going to save us. And they don't say that overtly in the book, but I see that. It's like, and that's the thing that made the wild card, and the Fremen themselves explained in the book that their religion kind of took on its own flavors. So a lot of the things that he was fulfilling these prophecies, but there was also things that the Bene Gesserit didn't create that all of a sudden started happening. So I look at the movie and the books, and it's like, well, sure, it's a man-made religion, but there's also things that happen. It did happen. He did see the future. Chani was part of the prophecy too when she did the tear and all. Like, so there is supernatural things happening that still couldn't be accounted for, even with all that plotting and planning with humanity. So to me, I speak of like if this happened in the real world, God is still outside there. And still working things the way he would want it to do, Like obviously, I don't know what the author originally believed in the world, but I see that because even when you think of a well structured, thought out story, there's still those variables of like you can't account for everything, and
literally unless you are God.
Unless you're God, right? Unless you're God,
there's no way to know every last little thing, as smart or as genetically engineered as you are. And that's why I really do like the concept or like the big idea of Dune there, because you could, like I said, in this second movie, you could clearly see it coming out more and more and more. And I feel like we're seeing more and more of the planets, and it's kind of like literally the world is expanding.
It is expanding, yes.
And you could see not just the physical world, like we're going around and seeing the different planets, but the concept of power and ultimate power is also getting bigger because you're on one planet, then you're on multiple planets, then you're in the galaxy, then you're in whatever, and then in everything.
And that's how the books are. So, books are you just follow Paul, and the world kind of opens up as you go. And especially the second, but there's going to be more houses, and there's going to be more characters going forward that are like, once you're the emperor, and you can see everything, there's a way more political stuff going on. And they hopefully will get to that in the next movie, too.
And those are like, it's like, in a sense, although it's a movie, the idea or that logic, that line of logic is still the same, where it's like, okay, we have the Earth, we have people, individual humans, and then we have, like the government, and then, okay, well, we don't have a world government yet, but, but we don't have a world government, but theoretically, if we did, okay, now what about the solar system? What about the galaxy? Do they rule the galaxy? Do they rule the universe? Do they rule everything?
And the way I see
what's ultimately true.
The way I see Dune, and when I've read it, because again, my master's is in classical literature, and I saw themes that he's just pulling this from Plato, he's pulling this from Aristotle, like clearly, he's pulling all these, which is why I think it's such a good story. He's pulling on the classics, and the idea is that like to me, Dune was more of a thought experiment. Is what is the most ultimate position that man can get in? Yeah. And then what? You know what I mean? And it's just sort of like then what happens when you get there? Who is the moral objective truth to that person?
Well, yeah, and like at the end of the day, it's like they made it to this position, right? And I'm still thinking like they make it to this as close as a human could be to a god or God. But you didn't make the universe in which you exist in. You know, it's like what made that?
Yes.
And what made the very structures and laws and ability for you to get to this position? You know, it's the same question.
It's always the same question.
No matter what universe you're in.
No matter what happens, it always comes down to that. And that's why I like the book. But besides, the guy's a great writer.
No, I could tell.
Like and the director's a great director for the movie. But like it always comes down to that, no matter. Which is why I can read books like that from a Christian worldview and be like, yeah, it's still the same story. It's the same story.
Yes,
you know?
Because so many people, non-Christians, and then Christians that haven't really I suppose delved into the logic of everything, the deeper parts of, I guess, Christianity, why it makes sense. And people watch things like that or hear ideas like, oh, see, it's just a man-made religion, and then they think it falls apart. Oh yeah, you're right, it could have just been this or it could have just been that. But it's like you have to get down to the foundational ideas of everything. And it doesn't matter what universe, even theoretical universe you're in. It's what was the beginning and who created it all. You know, because if nothing created the Dune universe, if the Dune universe was magically, the Big Bang out of nothing, and there's no God, there's no nothing, then whoever achieves that ultimate power, whether they be evil or good, quote unquote, whatever those concepts are, because he declares it. Again, there's still the outline question of that God human. They're still going to be thinking, why am I God? They're still going to be thinking, and how did I get here? So
and that's why I like that. I look at it. I really think he had a thought experiment of like, what could be the ultimate thing, and how do I get here? And that was kind of the thing. Is that
thanks for subscribing, Gama. A ver en español, ¿qué entiendo en el English? Ahí tratamos de hablar un poco de español, pero pues no. Gabriel no está.
Yeah, I know. My bad. but no, the whole thing is like it always comes down to that, is again what we're talking about, and this is the human experience is who is God and why does that matter to our reality? Because even today we read, if you're looking at the world around, you can read a story like Dune and see all the political and religious intertwining and plotting and scheming. It's still going to come down to that question. So when you look at the world today, it's like, well, who's going to be the next president? Who's going to be running the UN? Who's going to be, all these different things. It's still going to come down to, well, who's ruling that person? Who rules the ruler, right? What happens when they get into power? Like, and that's, to me, the most important question is who rules us, right? And every individual has to answer that. Who rules you? Not just who rules your leader, but who rules you? Are you getting your idea of right and wrong and morality and love and all of that stuff from yourself? Are you just creating it from Netflix shows and YouTubes and whatever,
random experiences,
and mushing things together, right? Or are you pulling it from the God of the Bible, right? Or are you getting it from what was revealed by God, or wherever you're getting it from? And that's what ultimately everything comes down to, is every human being has to account for themselves before God at some point in life. It's like, I always make a joke because a lot of people are like, oh, every road leads to God, and people are like, no, only Jesus leads to God. And I'm always like, well, technically any road will lead to God. But God is going to be like, I'm going to put you over here, or I'm going to put you over here at the end. True. You know what I'm saying? True, like, there's a group of people who loved him, and a group of people who didn't love him, or acknowledge him, and they're going to be separate. But everyone's going to run into God. You know what I mean? Just sort of like,
I guess that I never thought everybody is going. You're right. You're right about that. But
you just might not like it when you get there.
Exactly. You're either going to like it or you're not.
But there's only one way to know God, is my point. And I understand the phrase of that, but I like to just add that on there. Well, technically, you're right. Every road's gonna lead to him. You're just not gonna be happy with the ending when you get there, But and that's what I'm saying, is that, like, that's why I love when stories more accurately reflect reality. And I think of the Bible being revelation from God, and you can see how God has worked with human beings. But I also look at the classics of, like, Plato, Socrates, like, this is human reason alone trying to understand, like, what is the basics, how far can we get with human thought? And they actually get pretty far. Like, it's actually really good. And the closer you are to either of those things, or even both of them, the better the story, because they're grounded in a reality of what you can see and reason and what has been revealed. And that's why I like good stories, because it's ultimately a reflection of reality, and it helps you see even better reality around you. And that's why I think of, like, in ancient Greece, it was almost mandatory. Everyone went to the theater.
Yeah.
But the reason was because they intentionally wanted to learn about reality. Like they went to experience. It helped shape the soul of the person to see different things played out.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're not going to experience everything yourself. Yeah, you're not going
exactly.
to experience everything yourself. But if you can have someone, sort of crystallize these thoughts and ideas in something you can watch, you are still learning from that. And technically that's true today. We learn from our stories, right? It's just there's a lot of stories, and some of them are bad and some of them are good, and you're still learning from it. And that's the thing, is that I don't think people understand is you're still shaping your world by everything you're taking in.
Exactly, because it's under the terms of entertainment, which it's like, it can be entertainment, it's cool, right? But a lot of people, when you have absolutely, what's the classic phrase where it's just, if you don't believe in anything, you'll fall for everything, right? So it's like, if you don't believe in anything, then it's like, I know people who get their ideas of Satan from Netflix, Lucifer, right? They're like, but doesn't Lucifer have this? Because they got it from Netflix. And it's like, well, no, right? And it's the same concept with just Christianity and as a whole, right? It's, I saw this on TV, or I saw this on the news, a horrible person did a terrible thing, and they're associated with the church, right? So now that is what Christianity is. I'm never going to think about it. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the gospel today and talk about just Dune in general, like the ideas of it, because it's, well, more specifically when it's like Christianity, right? We want to know, it's always going to be your choice. You, from the beginning, you've had the choice. As humans, you have the choice to trust or not to trust, to obey, to not obey, to accept the free gift of, Jesus' life, or to not. That will always be your choice, and it's the exact same today. You'll never be forced to do it. So in that sense, we want to make it clear what it is that you're rejecting. You are free to reject it, like you can, but know what it is that you're actually rejecting before it is rejected, right? Not some some fake concept of it. Al rato lo veo con subtítulo. Oh, sí. Un gusto verlo, hermanos. Me encanta el Dune. Sí. Dune, yo apenas la vi, pero él sabe todo. Él sabe todo de Dune. Y yo apenas, pues, estoy tratando de entender más y más de eso. Pero sí, es lo que estamos hablando ahorita. Y las ideas más grandes de Dios y quién es Dios y cómo el poder de ese universo. But yeah, so that's basically what I want to talk about. Like, man, I actually really like that idea of what you said, because I've always liked fiction, right? Yeah. Because I think it gives the ability to tell stories in beautiful ways, and it's, even though the story is fake, the concepts and ideas are real, right? Yes. So it's like you're able to understand them from a different perspective, or in a more direct perspective, and you're still able to apply those things into the real world. So it's like, I think that there is goodness and beauty within fiction and within stories, but it's understand what is real, because the other side of the coin of that, right, in today's modern society with internet, there's 1,000,001 opinions, there's 1,000,001 movies, there's 1,000,001 things here and there. So it's, when you're getting all this, all these ideas and perspectives all at once, you're like, okay, what's real? Like, is anything real? And then, people could go crazy because of that. That's literally always boiling it down to the simplest, basic question. Yep. Anything else you want to talk about in Dune here?
No, yeah, I think that covers a lot, especially like the books are great. Like I said, they really fall in line with classical thought, like what theme. They're obviously more detailed and more rich and stuff, but
what is the voice? Is that like how did they get that?
It's trained. It's a trained ability to you learn someone, and you have such control over it that when you speak, there's something that's going on of like. It's like, but telling a kid.
Is it like supernatural? Is it like?
No, it's not supernatural. It's trained, and it's just, this is like 20,000 years in the future, right? So like, human beings have gained, especially the Bene Gesserit, because they have the memories that can continue on, have gained such control over the human body. They can alter genes and stuff like that, right? So they're able to know how to speak frequencies.
The frequencies.
Right? It's like frequencies and the weights of like these generations to know how to get. It's like think of the most basic ideas. Like I could tell my kid, I go clean your room, and they're like, whoa, like clean your room. They know from the tone and different things that like I'm gonna go do this to the extreme. You know, think of that to the extreme to where you can say things.
The frequency where even the other person's body is like, oh,
to control their body regardless of what they're doing. So and that's what the voice. It's something that's trained to be able to do that. And a lot of the powers that the Bene Gesserit have, men don't have, but. Jessica's been training Paul this whole time because she had that hope. Basically, she's like, I love the Duke. He wanted a son. If I have a boy, I might as well train him to be the Messiah because he's a boy and I could train him in this Bene Gesserit. So that was kind of a thing of like, I might as well see if he's the one. We were that close anyway, you know? So it's just sort of like, she trained him to have the voice. But then obviously when he unlocks the memories, it's like super precise and whatnot. So... But no, I all that to say, I the reason why I love Dune is because it's excellent storytelling. The books go very deeper in the themes. I love the movie visually. I love the director, but like Lord of the Rings, for example, written by J.R. Tolkien, and if you read the Lord of the Rings, you're gonna get a Christian worldview, regardless of whether you know it or not. Right? You're gonna get all these themes of right and wrong. I believe that's true of the Dune books, that if you read the Dune books, regardless of whether you're educated or not, you're gonna come away with the classical understanding of the classics. Regardless, because the way everything is layered, you're gonna walk away with some understanding of the classics, regardless of whether you're not. So I kind of think of it like the secular Lord of the Rings in a sense of that. Way. You will walk away understanding Plato and Aristotle without even knowing
like the basic ideas. Exactly. So. And oh my goodness, like. I seriously think that it's just so important to, because look, I believe the reality of the universe is God is real, right? That reality itself is the word of God, you know? Like, I believe that is the base.
Right.
And when you, like I said earlier, when you think logically, when you think philosophically, morally, all these things, it points back to that. And my biggest, like, I guess, frustration with, like, what I see in the world and my generation and just, like, bruh, people just don't think. That's the thing. It's like, start thinking, and as soon as you do, it will almost guaranteed, you'll end up in these questions. You'll end up in these questions of, is God real? Who is God? Where's God? Like, all these ideas, those are the core concepts, but it takes thinking. And that's why I'm saying, like, I think entertainment and, you know, videos like this and all this, the internet, I think they're good. They can be good. And they could also be debilitating, right? Where it's just like, how do you, I guess, go through your life without, even though you're watching entertainment and to a degree you're getting certain things, but you never actually think about it, right? Especially like things like, you know, like TikTok and like, oh man, brain rot. I can't. But anyways. Point is that there is the only thing, I guess, every single generation, every single, you know, century, every single whatever, Satan has always been working to separate humanity from God, no matter what. And it's been different every single time. And the number one and easiest way is just don't think about it, you know, because logically, emotionally, philosophically, you will end up in these conclusions. You will end up with the idea, is God real? Is he not? And what makes more logical sense will always be God has to exist, you know? And it's just, I guess that's my, like I said, that's my frustration. It's literally just get to thinking. Like, I know it can be anxiety, right? Ridden, or what was the word? I don't know. Anxious. It can make you anxious, right? Like, a lot of people, I feel like that's what I could see. At least, like, when I was growing up, when I see, like, high school and then college, and, like, it's just, once you start thinking, it's like, okay, whoa, we're getting too real or something like that, right? But that's something that, like, as a human, you have to do. You know, you have to do it. At a certain point, you either do it in a time of peace, you do it in a time where you're freely able to do it on your own, or reality will slap you across the face, and it'll be much harder to see things clearly, to think clearly, you know, because I never had time to do it in the first place. But point being, I want to talk about the gospel. I want to talk about Dune. I think that this is a good episode.
Yeah.
All right.
Go see Dune.
Yeah, go see Dune 2.
It makes Dune 1 better. You're gonna realize,
yes.
oh, he had this in mind the whole time.
100%. Because with Dune 1, it was literally like, I liked it, but it was like, all right, this is clearly all setting up something. Yes. And this does feel like a payoff, but still at the same time, like, okay, this still feels like a setup to even something.
It's
even
one
bigger.
movie. It's one
exactly.
movie.
So that makes sense. Yeah. All right, but gonna wrap it up here. Appreciate everybody who was here. Danae, Gami, appreciate you, and everybody else who was just watching, chill in the background. Appreciate you guys. We will be back probably next month. I don't know. It seems like once a month or every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Something like that. But appreciate you guys. Just get to stare at Gabe for a couple seconds awkwardly.
Yep. Next, I got a cool water bottle from AMC Theaters, Dune themed when we went to go see Dune. So, pretty cool. But